The darkness. The darkness is a very dark place, and it's a dark place because you are alone. And it's this being alone that causes, sort of pressurizes massive insight and creates change. 14 years of this, though, and I cannot explain to you what happened from beginning to end, but I tell you, it was the praying for knowledge, praying to know the truth of the why of life that brought me to that place. And it was part of the path to prevail and emerge out the other side, which I, at so many points, never thought I'd make it. And in that deep darkness, so many strange things happened. Suicidal thoughts that weren't even my own that came into my head. And very bizarre things that happened, all of a very religious nature, that naturally happened without knowingly prompting it. 14 years. Oh, it feels like it was 100. And it was the most bizarre situation. And I'm so surprised I'm out the other end. And this is without drugs and without alcohol. This is totally clean. And the bizarreness is more truthful than the life we're living. And the bizarreness reveals the fallacy of the lives that many of us are living. Certainly it was me. It's the not knowing that keeps you going, but it's the not knowing that takes you there to begin with. Being the seeker my whole life, it took me 30 years to get into that darkness. And then once I was in there, it was 14 years of, I don't want to say insanity because it was actually sane, but the truth is beyond anything really that the mind can willingly accept in today's world. And yet it is the truth. And I just finished reading Carl Jung's Red Book, and that is another way to explain the truth when he's talking to the prophet in Salome, maybe I'm saying that incorrectly. And what was conveyed to him was conveyed metaphorically. And of course, metaphor is the language of the Divine Mother. And the Divine Mother and Divine Father are very real, more real than the life you're living. And the life you're living is fraught many times with pain, because pain is the change mechanism. Pain is what is creating the change in you to happen, to accept more, to be more, to know more. The Red Book, especially Mysterium, the chapter Mysterium, was so illuminating to me after going through the darkness of the tunnel, because the darkness is the land of the mother, because you are blind. you go on feeling and thinking, preparing, administration, that's from the Father's world, and feeling, knowing, risking, adventure, that's from the Mother's world, and she rewards those who take that path. And the reward is always knowledge, truth, real truth. And they always say that truth will set you free. For sure, it does set you free. And yet at the same time, you're still here. You're still here in this world of light. It was just bearing witness to coming out of that 14 years of darkness, and I don't think I can ever explain it, because it is a pressure that pushes you inward. And it was when I was in this inward mode that I did all sort of my miracles, which are made for everybody and which happen daily, but these are the big ones. They are deliberate, and without knowing, they happen to you when you are deliberately on the path of knowing more and going and prepared to die to know more, going to the great depths. So just waking up to the world of light again is different in a way that it is relaxing, because it's a world we know and we believe what we see. But what we don't see, what we do see is like this much. What we don't see is infinite, and it is supporting what we do see. So you can imagine the breadth of truth. And there's, in this world of light, there's so much ignorance because we don't see behind the screen. It's kind of like in The Wizard of Oz, where each one of us is the Dorothy. We're on the path, and we finally get to the big destination, wherever we think is going to, illuminate for us and unroll the life we have prepared ourselves to reach. And we go to the Grand Master to ask the questions, and we realize that, oh my goodness, they're so little, they don't know, and then of course it comes back to us. We have to search within us. And the Dorothy, she pulls open the big ominous screen, and there's just this little person behind this. And it's conveyed metaphorically. I mean, the man was little, but it just really means a little man, so it could be a big tall man too. But uh, within that person is not the answer. The answer is always within us. And we do find what we are seeking. We do, when we put our efforts towards the seek. So so it's very different returning to the world of light and having to make some pretty hardcore choices, because you know that what you see is not the great truth. And so turning to live in the great truth is a pretty hard deal to go. So yes, I have been not around for the last year. I'm popping in and out, and on the path of making the switch. And it seems complicated, because trying to figure it out on the forefront, trying to figure out sort of in a linear way is a little bit tricky, because the way to deal with this life is twofold. It's sort of the seeing of it, the vision of it, but it's also the feeling of it, and the feeling, the resonance, the truth behind what you think you want and what you truly want. And that's a real tricky go. And it doesn't matter how old you are, you keep going. And the truth is found within the mystery of the female, the goddess, the great mother, because she is the ultimate. She is your soul. She is where you come from. She is where you're going again. And when you arrive back to her, to know her, really know her, you and rejoin with her, you go back to her bigger than you were before. Life is a mimic of the spiritual journey. Life as we know it. The physical life is the visual replay of the spiritual life, and all its nuances and all its pathways that the mind goes down to find what it believes it's seeking, until it begins to listen to the center, and the center begins to direct, and the mind becomes the administrator. They both need each other. They have a symbiotic relationship. Not one is more important than the other. They are both needed together. Both of them have different heights and different lows of being. We have the Divine Mother, and we have the Hag, and we have the stubborn, rigid Father, and we have the all-knowing Creator. So filled with light, and the darkness of the rigid Father. So we always have within these two parts of us, there are extremes at both ends. And always, in every day or every moment or every situation, we are trying to find the balance point between the two. And it's in that balance point that the energy rises within us. And the more the energy rises, the higher the knowledge received. And the deeper the energy drops, the opposite is true. How do I say that? The deeper the energy drops, the more sort of fragmentation happens. Although these two forces move in opposite directions, but they join at the center. This is, the whole dance of the emotional force within you, and the sort of thinking force within you, that the chakras are aligning to marry at all your centers. And when they do, you have totality of oneness, wholeness of being. And that's really, in that 14 years of what would seem as insanity, I mean, really, what would seem as insanity, both where I was being led and what the mind was trying to derive from all this darkness, because the mind doesn't know, right? So it's spinning its wheels in the mud until it finally lets go. And it's in the sort of letting go and accepting that the marriage takes place, and between the two forces, and that the truth comes into being, or the birth of truth, of a higher truth, comes into being. And it doesn't really matter what it is. It's happening always to you in smaller and greater ways. And it's happening to you just in your physical life without the mind aware of it, because God only knows itself, and therefore it can only recreate itself everywhere. Um, so your body is really the vessel of becoming absolute unity, be unifying with the mind, okay? The darkness and the lightness within the body wants to unify, and it's in that unity that you become whole. That the wholeness, the mind can articulate the perceived insanity, which isn't insane at all. It's just very advanced. And this advancedness is kind of like computer language, where it's made from computer language is binary, and it is made from a 1 and a 0, and it's this 1 and 0 that create everything known. And so, sometimes you're reading a very sophisticated journal or paper, or uh, and it's created from behind all that is something very simple, but it's what it's trying to convey, it's really trying to articulate, but it is the same two simple principles that build everything complex to everything simple, and the simple becomes complex, obviously. Um, uh, and within the body is the teacher, and the mind to some degree is the follower, but the mind is not the mind is needed. The father aspect is the creator, the administrator, the one that brings into being the wishes of the desire. So again, these two are equal. Their powers are equal in man. And when you become whole, it becomes a dance, because you're a little bit here and you're a little bit there and you're a little bit here, but you're always a little bit here and a little bit there. But right in the center is, in the unity of the dance, is where the skill is formed. You have good dancers, you have bad dancers, you have young dancers, you have old dancers. It's this is just an analogy for um, creating balance in the being. When the balance happens in the being to such an extent, that's when the kundalini happens. And the kundalini is really, it's where you're headed. It's why you're here. It's what you want. You want all these experiences to help pressurize and grow your kundalini, because kundalini is unity. It is togetherness. It is wholeness of body and mind. And that is the great beauty that you are birthing. And even though you're participating in all these different relationships, which are also birthing things, it is ultimately about you and your own birthing. And there are different, to each levels of the kundalini that gets birthed in you is a new shade to the lotus, right? And when you get to the heart, it is the big red birthing, because desire is known. It is the birthing of the lotus, and of the red lotus. And of course, the higher you get, the lotus colors change according to the new desires. It is emotion that is driving the opening of the lotus at every level of your being, to ultimately have the big lotus, which is the white lotus, which is the amalgamation of all colors. And you come from the black lotus, which also is the amalgamation of all colors. So it is the journey that is taking you through the colors of the rainbow, to arrive back to where you started, but bigger, more knowledgeable, because bigger meaning you hold more intelligence, you hold more weight. It's all invisible, but it's weighty. It's all uh, weighty, but light as a feather. And because in the knowing, in the great knowing, when you understand all aspects, you are like, ah, I see. And therefore the lightness comes. So you have the knowing, which is heavy, but then you have the lightness, which arises because you understand. So uh, I hope I explained that to some degree. And I will, well, I hope to see you soon. And I hope you have a great day wherever you are. Thanks for still being here. Take care. Bye bye.